as you grow your portfolio, having this many tool becomes extremely challenging. It becomes expensive. I like to call it a bit of death by subscription. The reason for that is because it's a bit of a slow death. You don't quite realize it, and then suddenly you're paying, $100 per unit with all the different tools added. The second, obviously, reason is I think context switching. It's an industry where we have to move so fast already. Going from building to building or home to home, going from a meeting with an owner to ensuring that the homes are actually ready and inspected, and it's an industry where you're on the move, and juggling between, let alone one tool on your phone is hard. Three makes it increasingly challenging. So context switching, I think, is a very expensive thing that is one of those hidden costs that you don't quite realize until it's too late. And then I think as a result of this context switching, the guest experience ultimately suffers. When a guest has to wait for you to go from one tab to another on your browser to be able to answer a question, and they're calling on the phone and they're locked in front of the building, and you need to pull a software for access control, but also pull another software to actually find their reservation. It ultimately impacts their experience, and it also impacts it in much more direct ways, where a guest is going to be interacting potentially with different tools as well.
Welcome to Short-Term Rental Solutions, a show for hosts and property managers looking to overcome obstacles, maximize revenue, and optimize their short-term rental business by learning from the innovators who are designing the solutions that are shaping our industry. Everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Short-Term Rental Solutions Show. We've got a great episode for you because today we have Simon Seroussi, who is the co-founder of Sosuite and Suiteop. Sosuite was actually a property management company that grew to manage over 200 properties. And as a result of that, they migrated and are now a technology company with the technology solution Suiteop. And so we're going to have a chance to talk to Simon, learn a little bit about what that journey looked like, and how, as a result of that, they really discovered the importance of integrated systems and how integrated systems can help us as we are looking to grow our businesses and scale. So, Simon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for the introduction and for having me, Christian.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So, there's a lot of people out there who may not have heard of your company yet, who may not be familiar with you. So would you be willing to just take a minute and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about kind of the journey that you had and what eventually led to the development of Suiteop.
Sure, absolutely. So, I'm originally from France. I've been in sort of the US for over a decade. And so obviously growing up in Europe and then moving to the US, traveling has always been a very core component of my life. And as a result, I think very naturally of that, I became a pretty early Airbnb host. Back then, when there were little rules, little regulations, and technology was still at its infancy. And I think I started hosting back in my small studio on Airbnb in New York in 2013, and doing so really as a way to welcome and meet people in my home, which back then again was like this small 250 square feet studio back in the East Village, and it was also because it was a matter of use of space. When I went away for a weekend, visit my family back home in France, it was always heart-wrenching to think that I was leaving behind an empty space that could otherwise welcome travelers looking for alternative accommodations. So that's something that I really took a lot of pleasure in doing on a more very amateur level. But it certainly, I think, started a bit of a spark. And many years later, in 2019, with my co-founder then, Jean-Emmanuel Lozi, also from France, we decided who was back then on Airbnb host as well, we decided to sort of put that in a bit more, to practice a bit more professionally. And so we started out with one home, and we decided to pick the city of Philadelphia back then. For a couple of reasons. Regulation was important to us. We wanted to have a place that was regulated. We had been through the ups and downs of the New York regulations, and we thought, let's not get caught by surprise in 3 years. And obviously price consciousness. We couldn't really afford purchasing a home in New York, so we decided to buy an apartment in Philadelphia for the intent of renting it back then on mostly Airbnb. That was a great opportunity. It worked out quite well, and we sort of started wanting to grow the business, but realized that we didn't have enough funds to do so, and so we opted for several models and grew the business to over 200 units. And I think we'll speak through some of that today and that journey until about a year ago, faced with a myriad of technologies under our tool set to manage our growing portfolio, we decided that we wanted to go back to our roots, our technology backgrounds. This is what we were doing professionally prior to founding Sosuite, and build a technology product to both operate our own property management company, but most importantly, to help others that were growing their portfolios solve the same challenges that we had encountered.
Yeah. Well, and the way your operations are set up and the way you operate your business are completely different when you just have a handful of properties versus having, like you said, 200 plus properties. So, kind of walk me through that journey and some of those stages that you guys found yourselves in, because, I know people who are eager to get into property management, or if you're in a running a property management company already, there's certain points at which you need to kind of take an honest assessment of how your operations and how your business is going, and potentially decide whether or not it's time to change up your systems in an effort to make sure you can begin scaling to the next level. What did that look like for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing to take into account is it's not a hobby. It's real work. Even at small scale, the work evolves. But when you start out even with one property, especially with one property, you pour your heart out into it. You feel extremely invested. And when we started out that initial property, we were doing everything, obviously from the painting to some demolition ourselves, and rebuilding and learning about how to install end-to-end window treatments. We kind of like learned it all with our absolutely no maintenance background whatsoever, and that was a fun adventure. And obviously, we realized that if we wanted to grow the portfolio, we need to also grow the team. But we also needed to look at alternative models. Back then, the short-term rental space, the vacation rental space had been more mature, but it was still considered a bit of a nascent industry, and so getting funding to purchase homes or apartments wasn't readily available. And so we opted then to grow our second and third and fifth unit for a rental arbitrage model, which effectively involves working with owners that may have a hard time renting specific homes long term to other residents, or simply want a bit of a turnkey management solution, and effectively offering them to lease their asset, master lease their asset for a certain number of years. We use the term sort of master lease because, unlike a lease where you're typically the occupant, here you're effectively taking the role of an owner. You are maintaining the property as if it was your own, paying rent every month, but you are then commercializing it, which in this case involves outfitting it with furniture and getting it in tip-top shape to be able to welcome guests for short stays. So we sort of opted for this model initially. We were also looking at some big players in the industry that were seemingly doing this quite successfully back then in 2020, 2019 with Sonder, for example. And so we grew the model to about 20, 30 apartments that way, which enabled us to hire our first couple of team members. One thing that was really crucial to us as we got started was really building a team in-house. We knew that in order to control every single part of the equation, from the check-in to the checkout and everything that happens in between and during a guest stay, and to be sure that the quality was always maintained to a specific standard, that we needed folks that were invested in the company, that felt and that hiring contracted company would potentially pose a risk because we wouldn't be so sure who would come at work today and what standards that uphold. So that's something that we started off from the start, and that's been really true to us till this day. We've had, housekeepers that have been with Sosuite for multiple years and that have built like true housekeeping careers even at the company and often beyond. I think a realization came along a few months prior to sort of the COVID pandemic in March 2020, where we realized that we were accumulating a lot of liabilities with the master lease model. Because while it gives you a lot of flexibility, it's also a model that requires you to pay rent, regardless of market conditions, and doesn't necessarily align incentives with the actual owners of the property quite well. So if there is a maintenance issue and you're a long-term resident of a home, they could take a couple of days to fix it, and typically that's okay. But when you're a guest staying in a unit and there's a maintenance issue, you need to be fixed right then and then. And ownership groups don't necessarily understood that, and that those are some of the operational, I think, limitations of a master lease model. So to actually improve quality and grow faster with less required funds, because we were also responsible for all the starting funds under that master lease model, we opted for management agreements, which I think had been more common in the more, call it, traditional vacation rental industry in non-urban areas for quite some time, but that was still fairly new in the, call it, like, apartment hotel business. So that was a journey which was enabled by our track record that we had built with our initial master lease model, where we could now show numbers and a true operation and a local team, which enabled the first couple of owners to put trust in us and to sign management agreements with us. Sosuite that way grew to over almost 200 units under management in about two-ish years. And
Scaling fast. That's a lot of growth.
yeah, we scaled fast for a couple of reasons. We actually doubled in size between March 2020 and December. Some people were looking at us, with big eyes, like, why are you doing this while there's a global pandemic? Building a vacation and travel-based business, travel-dependent business. We actually thought this was the best time to grow because there were a lot of opportunities in the market and a lot of owners looking to, find smarter ways to monetize some of their empty or underperforming real estate assets. So this was actually a really unique opportunity for us to grow. And then I would say about 12 months ago, a couple of things have happened in the evolution of our company to today. The first one is we've taken bolder and bigger assets. It's when you're in this business and you don't necessarily have like an extensive operational or hospitality background, it's easy to question and doubt yourself. But we went after institutional real estate ownership groups and family offices that had important portfolios and started developing relationships with them and earning their trust and signing newer deals. So more recently, have been able to onboard a beautiful property located right across from Independence Hall, and those are things that have been, I think, enabled by persistence and the local team. Because at the end of the day, property management business is a human one. Even in the short-term rental space where technology enables to render things fairly contactless in many ways, it's still people behind the scene making things happen. And building local teams is a fundamental differentiator that I think a lot of people don't quite realize, can help in controlling your unit economics, controlling the quality, but also earning the trust of owners. Because when they know that things are in good hands and people that actually know the market, they're much more likely to work with you. But as we scale the portfolio, from 30 to 60 to 100, 200 units, I think our biggest challenge along the way was very frequently technology. My co-founder and I both have a technology background. I actually worked at a travel technology company that was acquired by a European travel giant called Amadeus for many years, and so this was a domain that I was familiar with. And what I quickly realized was that in the short-term rental space, it's not quite as maybe mature as it was in the traditional hospitality space, and it sort of went through this phase of going from a couple of all-purpose tools and typically PMSs, then an innovation with what I like to call sort of best-of-breed software that do one thing extremely well. And we were sort of in that phase where we were using so many different softwares to do so many different things. And we can talk obviously more about this, but this is really from that experience that Suiteop was born just about a year ago, or at least the idea emerged.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. You said that we could talk a little bit more about that. Like, when did you guys kind of decide to tackle this beast? I mean, to create your own solution for the problem that you guys were facing?
Yeah, so the first thing we built was a booking engine actually for Sosuite. We were still are users of Guesty. It was a great PMS, but especially a year ago, Guesty's booking engine was not highly customizable, and we wanted something that could showcase our brand better and really earn more direct bookings, which has been, I think, a big topic of conversation in the industry for the last 24 months. And we thought, let's build up our own booking engine and see if we can do that first and see how that can work, because we'll be able to immediately know whether or not we're capable of building a technology product and how fast, because speed matters, I think, even more in technology than it does in other industry. And so in a couple of months, about 3 months, we built a booking engine from the ground up, and about a quarter later, our direct bookings went from about 8% to close to 30. And that was enabled by a better SEO strategy, ranging from very organic content to blog posts, and just a more converting booking engine. It was converting about 10 times better than what we were using previously. So that was for us the proof of concept that we could build technology for the space, that we could eventually offer the technology to other operators And then from there, I think that this newborn confidence as associated with the fact that we were using all those different tools to operate our business, that led us to decide to make the decision that we could build something better. We were using a tool for access control, smart locks, which is such a crucial thing as part in the vacation rental industry today. You want to be able to have guests check in and check out without requiring obviously a front desk or a lockbox because keys get lost. We were using a different tool for ID collection and security deposits and guest screenings, sometimes even two tools for those things. We were using a different tools for guest portals. And while all those tools in their own right were great pieces of technology, it ultimately leads to I think a disjointedness both in the operation as it does in the guest experience. And the main reason for that also is truly scale. When there's 2 or 3 individuals at the helm of a company doing 80% of the day-to-day with a small team of field operations folks, from housekeepers to maintenance people, juggling between 2 or 3 tools can work because there's usually a much more easy to get a common understanding of something when there's a smaller group of individuals. But as you grow your team, as you grow your portfolio, having this many tool becomes extremely challenging. It becomes expensive. I like to call it a bit of death by subscription. The reason for that is because it's a bit of a slow death. You don't quite realize it, and then suddenly you're paying $100 per unit with all the different tools added. The second obviously reason is I think context switching. It's an industry where we have to move so fast already. Going from building to building or home to home, going from a meeting with an owner to ensuring that the homes are actually ready and inspected. And it's an industry where you're on the move, and juggling between let alone one tool on your phone is hard. 3 makes it increasingly challenging. So context switching I think is a very expensive thing that is one of those hidden costs that you don't quite realize until it's too late. And then I think as a result of this context switching, the guest experience ultimately suffers. When a guest has to wait for you to go from one tab to another on your browser to be able to answer a question, and they're calling on the phone and they're locked in front of the building, and you need to pull a software for access control, but also pull another software to actually find their reservation. It ultimately impacts their experience, and it also impacts it in much more direct ways, where a guest is going to be interacting potentially with different tools as well. A screening tool, which will be one URL, which will then bounce them off to another one. And when you start having a couple hundred properties under your belt, you want to be able to have a brand that can compete with the large flags in the industry. And those flags ranging from the traditional hotel groups, the Marriotts of the world, all the way to the more new gen short-term rental companies like the Island Stays and Saunders. They've spent millions of dollars on technology because they've raised a ton of venture capital and they can afford that. But when you're more of a bootstrapped operator or family operated, and you want to compete with them, it's tough. The options are very limited.
Yeah. So, I mean, what advice, if you were starting over again, or if you were, given a piece of advice to someone who was looking to scale and kind of go down that road quite similar to what you guys have done, what would you say to them?
So, first, there's no need to rush it. I think there's a lot of beautified stories online about the need to build a companies extremely quickly to try and raise money. And while that is valid for some industries, like and potentially a bit more like software, in the hospitality industry, things are inherently more human. And when human capital is involved, important decisions need to be made every day. With who are you hiring? Who are who are the people that are going to be speaking with your guests day in, day out, and helping them solve issues? Do they have all the resources at their hand in order to build that? So building a knowledge base is really crucial. It's one thing to have information about your property, but how about all your processes? And that can't happen in a day. You can't come up with an incredibly tailored SOP for when a guest for every single issue that a guest might encounter, or every single question that a guest may have. That takes time to build, and that's just inherent to the business. I think it's not something to be worried about. A lot of the very successful vacation rental companies today, many of which were like family built businesses with hundreds, thousands of units under management, they were built over 10, 15, 20 years. They support many families, from the employees' families to the founders, and they're extremely successful. And if you look at large hotel groups as well, it's very rare to see something happen over even one generation. It's inherently, I think, a human business, and that's something that comes with appreciating that pace must be, I think, measured. That there are times to grow fast, and there are times to also take pauses and reflect on what you've built in order to improve it. Because putting a property together and furnishing it is one thing. Maintaining it over 5 to 10 years is entirely different. And we've learned from our own operation that we can start great, but then 3 years later, before we realize it, the property isn't sticking in top of the ranking as well as it was maybe on OTAs as a couple of years back. And those pieces of furniture are a little bit torn. And as you scale, you simply cannot have that many eyeballs anymore on everything. While your field operations team having it in-house means you do have eyes and ears, and it's fantastic. And that's why having in-house housekeepers, for instance, is a game changer. It's still incredibly challenging to keep a high level of quality when you have 10 homes that you're personally invested day in, day out, and that you can expect yourself every day or very frequently, than when you have 150 or 200, at which point some homes you're not going to see for 2 years or a year, because you're trying to grow your business. So that's when technology really also comes into play. I wouldn't discount technology at a small scale. I think it's really important from the get-go to be very open to using tools to make one's life easier and work smarter. But as you scale, it's ultimately inevitable. Otherwise, quality suffers.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great segue into this, you know, tell us more. Tell us about Suiteop. What have you guys built, and, how did it really become this integrated system and integrated solution that you guys, were trying to solve that personal pain point that you had?
Sure. Suiteop was a very personal experience. We I think what first made the creation of this tool a bit unique is that we have a background on technology, but we were operators for a couple of years at that stage, and so we understood the complexities of being an operator and the complexities of every single person involved in the operation. That is something that in many tools that we used, while the features were potentially there, the biggest challenge was actually using them on the field and while you're moving around and when you're faced with a guest that has an issue that needs to be solved immediately. And so we felt like our operator experience would allow us to build a great tool. And so what we did is really, we didn't want to reinvent initially the wheel. We thought the PMS marketplace was already quite mature in our space with quite a few successful PMSs. We were big users of we are big users of Guesty ourselves, and so the decision was we're going to look into all the different components that a PMS either doesn't do or does, but maybe a bit poorly. And the main reason for that is that the PMS is already a big piece of software. PMSs are trying to they're managing your ARI, your availability, your rates, and your inventory, and your channels very often as well. They're very often channel managers, and then PMSs have all the ancillary things. They'll have unified inboxes and sometimes other tools too. But everything that happens once a booking comes through, all the way to when a guest checks out and you have to get the home ready to get a new booking, PMSs just aren't equipped to solve for all of those things. And that's just because that's not the nature where they were built for in the first place. So that's what we set ourselves to build on with Suiteop. And our first the first thing we wanted to solve for was first smart device management. Because one thing that happens with scale, if you use technology and hardware specifically, so smart thermostats and smart locks, potentially even go even further and use smart lights. With 5 listings, you're managing 5 locks, and what I say might be obvious, but when you have 200 locks to manage with 200 homes and hundreds of thermostats, and things become much harder to maintain. When a lock goes out of battery, it's just as bad as when the key is missing from the lockbox. So you need to be on top of those things, and we were finding that increasingly difficult. So we started by building, a really powerful smart device management platform, enabling an operator with virtually any smart device to be able to have them in one place, regardless of the brand. So completely hardware agnostic. And those smart devices not only, by the way, include locks and thermostat, but they also include monitoring device. So whether you're using NetAtmo or Minute or Noise Aware, you can visualize all of this alongside your locks and everything else that you operate. So being able to control everything in one place was crucial because once those devices break, the guest experience does as well, and so does the operation. If your housekeeping team can't get inside the unit because the lock has out of battery or has an issue and has been offline, and they have to wait for someone in maintenance to come. Suddenly your check-in is late, and that has cascading effects. So being able to control those smart devices remotely at any point in time was also obviously part of how the platform was built. And most importantly, I think ease of use and ease of onboarding. If you have 200 smart devices, connecting 200 of them should take an hour or two to the platform. It shouldn't take you a couple of weeks. So as you scale as an operator, you find that onboarding software is an increasingly daunting thing. And so we wanted to make onboarding as seamless and easy as possible. So once we built that platform, we decided, those smart devices are great because they enable us to, push codes and help guests, when they're having an issue with the thermostat, and benefit from energy saving automations where the thermostat is going to be set to an automatic temperature when the unit is vacant. But how about actually providing that access to guests? You have all those devices, but how do guests actually truly benefit from them other than just having their own code on the lock? Ultimately, if you can use your smart device from your phone and unlock a door without even punching in a code, then why can't a guest? And so, we set on building a digital guest portal that would enable guests to control those smart devices and to benefit from a plethora of information about your property, ranging from an in-depth property guide all the way to local recommendations on where to go, and an entire section dedicated to check-in that you make entering and exiting the home extremely easy, and obviously a dedicated section for guests to be able to actually make their stays smart, because that's an important differentiation today. That's also, to be honest, a bit of an expectation. If you have a smart thermostat and all the guests can do is go to the room and manually turn it around, and they can't from the living room set their bedroom to preferred temperature, so then when they go to bed in an hour, it's going to be already set. You're obviously missing out on some differentiation there, and so that's how Suiteop grew from becoming a smart device management to a digital guest portal. From there, we decided to build really guest screening and guest verification. That's something that's so crucial to this industry, where you don't have necessarily, and most often than not, you do not have a front desk in a full service property. And so how do you ensure that the person who is coming to your property is who they say they are, which is crucial to prevent property damage, to prevent fraud, chargebacks, and overall safety of your home and potentially other guests that may be nearby. And so ensuring that through a really thorough guest screening that enables guests to biometrically take a selfie and take an ID and have a biometric check happen in the background, but also enable operators to collect a security deposit and to be able to ask specific questions to guests about their stay in order to personalize it. That's when also things become interesting. Is like, how do you, when you're adding steps to a guest stay, how do you ensure that it's not just a burden and you're not just making it harder for them to check in, but you're actually providing value? So by integrating things and I'll give you one example now, by integrating a digital guest portal to a guest screening, you can offer that, because during the pre-check-in, during that screening, the guest is going to answer questions about their stay, such as are they coming with a pet, or what's the reason for their stay. Those questions are entirely customizable, and based on this, the guest portal can automatically adjust in order to highlight specific upsells and really get that which is personalization effectively at scale. And that's one of those challenges which large operators struggle with. It's with 10 homes, it's very easy to be able to welcome someone in person every day, or build a care package, or know that they're coming with a pet and have a bowl waiting for them. But when you have hundreds of homes, it's increasingly challenging to do so. And so with Suiteop, we aim to solve for that with our integration between guest screening and digital portal. Those are the three core tools that are live today. And I'm also excited to share that in beta, we have a task management tool for field operations teams, because we believe fundamentally that if operations and guest experience live more closely together in one tool, then you benefit from synergies that guests can benefit from, and vice versa. Such as, if a guest requests a maintenance issue on the digital portal, that maintenance issue can automatically create a task inside your task management system it can get scheduled even automatically depending on how the guest requests it. All those different things, remove human interaction and things that frankly don't add value to a guest stay. You don't need a human creating a task manually on your task management system when the tool can get it for you. Humans should be here to have higher ROI tasks that actually elevate the guest experience and with a true human and warmth. So this, yes, Suiteop, I think we're very complete tool in that respect.
Well, and I can hear you said earlier that you guys were trying to build something that would, from the moment the reservation is booked, help guide and enhance that guest's experience and stay during that whole spectrum of time. So that's fantastic. I love that. I mean, I'm kind of excited to see it in action. And actually, I'm going to just say Simon has been good enough to let us have a chance to have a little bit of a tour and get a feel for how kind of behind the scenes of Suiteop, as it were. And so, as we wrap up the podcast here, I just want to let everybody know that if you follow us over to the STR Hub YouTube channel, you'll be able to join us on that tour and get a sense for what the platform actually looks like, which is going to be fantastic. So, Simon, thank you so much. I really appreciated all the things that you shared with us about the journey that you guys had with growing Sosuite. And, there's a lot of lessons that can be learned based on the experiences of the things that you shared. So, because I know that there's a lot of people who are eager to kind of go on this journey that, contrary to what some of the news blurps have gone out, the industry is still growing. And, I think like August was a record breaking month for short-term rental stays. And so there's still massive opportunity in the industry. And there's still people excited about investing and purchasing short-term rental properties that are going to need a property manager. And so it's terrific to see that there are still people like you and Suiteop coming online and creating solutions to help us effectively provide that service to the people who need it. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Absolutely. I'm excited to share more about the platform. I'll share my screen and we'll take it from there.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody who joined us for the podcast portion. And like I said, we're headed. Simon and I are headed over to have a look at it, and so feel free to join us over on YouTube. We're going to continue the conversation, but be sure to join us next time when we have our next conversation with the innovators who are designing the solutions that are shaping our industry.
All right.
Yeah. Go ahead. Take it away.
Fantastic. Let me know when you can see it.
Yeah, I can see it. I'm actually going to tuck us away so people can get a full view of the dashboard here on the platform.
Absolutely. All right. So this is obviously a demo account, but Suiteop was really built to serve operators from a handful of units. We're looking to streamline their operations all the way to a couple thousand of units. It's really built for scale and to follow you in your growth with a ton of functionality that can be used at various stages of one's growth. So with that being said, when this is the Suiteop dashboard, and the goal here is making a dashboard that actually is highly actionable, not simply information, but things that can help you take action on your operation day in, day out. It's set automatically to today's date. And what you would see is how many check-ins you have, how many checkouts, and how many of those are back to back. Those are little things that we tend to forget about it. While check-ins and checkouts might be obvious, understanding how many of those actually have both the check-in and a checkout at the same property is a crucial thing that enables you to prepare for capacity and operational staff needed to make the day happen. Right under here, you have your pre-arrival check-in, and then obviously our task management on the right with tasks that are getting done today. Any noise alerts, temperature alerts, humidity alerts, and CO2, depending on the smart device that you use here for monitoring, can enable you to capture data and set smart alerts that are going to be shared depending on thresholds that you've set for your properties. What we're going to do right now is we're going to dive right into our reservations. And here we have a reservation for you, Christian, checking in, I believe, today, checking out in 10 days, in 4 days, excuse me. And so what you can see here is a couple of components to the reservation. So the first one being, and I'm going to zoom in a bit to make sure everything's really visible. See the guest name and the location, information about the property that might be handy to be able to always see at glance. And really, because the goal of this page and the goal of Suiteop is that if a guest calls you or texts you and asks virtually any question about your property or has an issue getting in or accessing their check-in information, it should be something that you can answer in just a matter of a couple of seconds. So there are really three components here that speak to the various modules of Suiteop. The first one, Suite Portal, is the digital portal that we spoke about earlier. And what we do here is we can track how many times a guest has actually opened that portal. we do so in order to be preventative. This is an industry where you want to, reactivity is not something one can afford, because if an issue happens at 3:30 and you have a check-in at 4, it's typically too late to fix it. So how do you ensure that that doesn't happen? By knowing that your guests have actually interacted with your portals, or have seen your check-in instructions, and are aware of what's happening, prior to check-in. So having that data at a glance has actually been extremely useful for our users to be able to help their guests ahead of time. Um, the second column here is access. So this being a demo, account, I'm not going to be able to actually show you every functionality here, but access is, as the name indicates, it's how the guest is going to be accessing the property, and what the status on the different on the code is. So active simply means that a code was successfully pushed to the lock for that guest check-in today, and this way you can be you can be assured that that code has been pushed. We're, as a tool built by original operators, we're very cognizant on the need to have really important information at your fingertips, and really, like, knowing what the code is one thing, but actually being always aware that the code has been pushed to the lock, and having that verification that tells you that the lock has pinged you back, informing you that the code is pushed, is something that's important. That's crucial, because you're always going to have lock failures. Internet is going to fail, and the code isn't going to get pushed. And when you have hundreds of reservations here and you see that one has failed, you can immediately take action and provide a backup code to the guest, for instance, before they get to the property and actually experience it themselves.
So at a glance, I'm looking at all my days reservations, and green, 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 and then maybe there's one that's red, and I, at a glance, know that that's the one I need to troubleshoot right away.
That's exactly right. The third component is Verify, which is Suite Verify. So this is our guest screening tool. Very similar here. We show you in real time what the status for that reservation, for those reservations, is. Pending simply means that the guest hasn't completed it yet. It might be in progress. If the guest has been successfully verified, which I'm going to walk you through in a moment, that'll turn green into verified. And if the guest requires a manual review because there's a discrepancy in their somewhere in their screening process, then we'll highlight it and we'll inform you in the tool that you use today. So Suiteop, has a two-way actually integration with Slack, with a powerful Slack bot that can alert you on a specific channel of your choice when something happens. So whether it's a guest that has to go through manual review, a lock that has not been pushed, we don't expect operators to be able to have to monitor this page day in, day out either. And we want you guys to be able to not only live your life, but also do the important work needed to make the magic happen in your properties day in, day out. And for that reason, we notify you, whether it's by text, by email, on Slack, and other means coming soon, of potential issues, so that you can address them ahead of time.
Great.
So what we're going to do here is we're going to open this reservation. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you have all sorts of information here about the guest, checking details. If that information gets updated here, it will automatically update the code at which the lock will be available for the home. Note that if you have multiple locks, which can happen, you can have a lock for your garage, a lock for your home. We can connect to as many devices as you need for one home too, whether it's a building door to access an apartment, or an initial gate to access a home door later. And in that way, depending on the hardware that you use, and more often than not, what we're able to do is push one code to all the doors. So that way that the guest is going to be able to remember their code and have a very seamless experience, not having to remember 2 codes for their entire stay.
That's great.
So scrolling down here, what you'll see here are the various steps that a guest needs to take in order to complete that pre-check-in. What we're going to do is we're going to immediately open up that guide. So the guide is meant to be entirely mobile friendly. It's a mobile first guide. And when a guest opens it for the first time, this is what they're going to be seeing. An invitation to complete a pre-check-in. Now, one of the great advantages, obviously, of Suiteop and having guest verification as part of the digital guest portal is that a guest that has booked a month in advance or a week in advance and is invited to complete their pre-check-in may not want to complete it immediately. In fact, we find that 80% of guests who get an email right after booking, inviting them to, say, upload their ID and complete other check-in steps, won't do it right away. If you think about it, it's a very natural thing, right? I mean, you just spent 20 minutes looking for the vacation rental of your dreams in order to spend a great holiday, and you entered your credit card information and et cetera, depending on the OTA you booked on or if you booked direct. And then suddenly you're asked to yet do more work. So what guests can do here is they can skip this and they don't have to do it right now. And that enables you to have guests interact with your guide, from, enjoying your local guide that you can build in a few moments, to benefiting from upsells, because it's not because a guest hasn't completed their pre-check-in that they shouldn't be able to, you know, already request an early check-in or book a mid-stay clean. All those are things that a guest should be able to do even prior to, say, uploading their ID. So what happens, however, is if a guest tries to look for access information, they might be seeing the property details, but what they're not going to be seeing is the check-in information. And every time they try and click here or on that banner at the top here, they're going to get invited to complete that pre-check-in. Now, one thing worth noting is that this guide here is fully brandable and can be entirely white labeled, from obviously all the colors to the logos, all the way to the URL. The default URL is app.suiteop.com, but it could very well say, guest.myvacationrental.com if you happen to own that domain. That would be great. Whatever domain name you own can be part of that URL, and even the prior text can be customized too.
That's great.
So
That's
what we're going to do here is just guide you through the pre-check-in. Now,
I don't know. I'm kind of sketchy. I might fail.
If I complete it for you, Christian, it's definitely going to fail, because it's going to recognize that my name on my ID and isn't quite matching with yours. But what we're going to do here is just guide you through the steps, and all those steps are entirely customizable, not only at the step level but at the source and property level. We understand that every single operator's business is different, and that every OTA is different too. You might not want to ask an Airbnb guest to complete an ID verification, because you might trust in Airbnb's pretty thorough new identification procedures that they've put in place in the last few years. Similarly, you might find that someone can attract guests that undergo less verification, and you want to have an additional step for those guests, or potentially a larger security deposit. All of this can be entirely customized at the source, based on why the guest booked, where they booked, the duration of their stay, and a ton of other configuration there. So first thing we enable you to do here is capture the guest details. If a guest is using an OTA masked email, you're going to be able here to capture their real email. The second thing is going to be customized questions. So, from single select to multi-select questions. Now, this is not just something to ask the guest. This is something that actually can add value to the guest. And there's a few ways in which it does. So the first one is, if a guest answers a specific question, you can get a notification only if that question is answered in that particular way, say to a Slack channel of your choice, enable you to make educated decisions. So if a guest, you might have a property that is pet friendly, but very frequently when you advertise a property as pet friendly, a guest is just going to assume that they can bring their pet and that there are no incidental fees, because that's typically written in small text at the bottom of your listing. Here you can create an automation where every time a guest says, yes, I'll be bringing a pet, you get notified. So you can reach out and say, we look forward to welcoming your furry friend. We have a fee of X dollars a night. But you can go further than that as well, where every single time a guest answers a specific question here with a specific response, you're going to be featuring unique upsells into the guest portal, enabling you again for that personalization at scale. So I will not unfortunately be bringing my pet to the RMA.
Oh, my lab Piper is going to be so sad. She has to stay behind.
Same here. And a couscous will be sad too. So the third step is other guests. Now, again, what's really unique here is, guest portals and when traveling are frequently reserved to the booker, the person that actually made the reservation. And that's an unfortunate thing, because the beauty of vacation rentals is that it frequently enables people to travel on more of a budget as a larger group and stay together in a home, as opposed to book 5 hotel rooms. So why not all benefit from that guest portal? So this step allows you to enter other guest details and actually have that portal be dynamically shared via text and email with those other guests in your party.
I love that. Because not only does it help, again, cut down on potential questions, but you've just captured potentially more people that you can use for future marketing that have already stayed at your property and had a fabulous experience.
That's exactly right. And there's also an operational benefit, which is if for any given reason throughout the stay you need to reach out to the guest and the main booker isn't answering, you now have the contact information for other people in their traveling party, which at times can be useful, if not essential for safety
I,
reasons. So
I didn't even think of that, but that's a really good point.
could be entering my information here. Oops. There we go. Now, the third part is an agreement. This can be using custom variables. It can be a rich text. You can even use colors. What's great is you can even use images in your agreement. Well, that seems like overkill, but there are instances in which properties have a ton of amenities.
Mm.
A pool is a good use case, and you might actually want to add an exhibit in your agreement that shows the pool and highlights to guests that if you are using this pool, then you are agreeing to the specific safety terms outlined here. So making this agreement highly customizable here was important. So Christian, you'll have to forgive me, but I'm going to just do a big CC here, signing for you, but I
I
don't claim
agree.
the
It's okay.
signature.
I will follow all of your rules and be the best guest.
Fantastic. So the next step, which I'm going to have to partially skip here, is the identity check. And I'm not using a mobile device, but the identity check is a two-step process where you're going to have to. We're asking guests to both upload a photo ID and upload a selfie. What we do here is you can't actually upload a photo from your camera roll, so you have to upload a true ID that you're actually carrying on you. This obviously reduces the risk of fraud, and because we've seen many instances, I'm sure other operators have experienced it, especially since 2020, of stolen cards and bookers that are booking and under someone else's name. And this is really the step where you're able to help catch them and catch those frauds before they're impacting your business. Because the guest isn't going to be uploading only their ID, they're going to be uploading a selfie. And what we do in the background is we're going to compare the ID and the selfie and run a biometric comparison to ensure that the two match. We're also going to compare the ID to all the available information we have for the reservation. So if the ID is if there's a name discrepancy or the ID is somehow expired or there's other potential flags, we'll be able to highlight this to you so that you can take action again before those check-in instructions are dynamically shared with the guests. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to waive it. As you can see, those steps have been completed. I'm going to waive that ID check. It's done in real time. I'm also going to waive the security deposit, but you can obviously capture a security deposit here. We've made it extremely easy for operators that are dealing with multiple owners. We're conscious that there are instances in which, and there you go. There are instances in which, you need to use multiple Stripe accounts, for instance, because
Mm.
one per owner based on rental agreements that you have with those owners and contracts. You can have multiple Stripe accounts connected to your Suiteop account and multiple secure deposits of different amounts depending on the property and the source, and have those be properly collected to the right accounts. Those are sort of enterprise needs that I think impact a couple of our users today. Now, what you see is now the magic is happening. That pre-check-in has been completed. I waived some requirements. The other requirements were completed and there were no flags. The guest has been now marked as verified. And what happens now is that the check-in instructions have been unlocked. Now, if for some reason the guest had been, manual review, then something similar to this would be showing, just explaining that we're still verifying their information. And would be actually a true denial. And as you can see, again, like dynamically check-in instructions are hidden because you want to make sure that a guest isn't going inside a home until they've completed that screening process. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark that guest as verified. There you go, Christian. You have access to the check-in instructions here. And you can now know how to access the unit. We'll pull dynamically the code that we pushed on the lock. If there are multiple codes because you're using multiple locks, then we'll have multiple lines here. We're soon adding the ability from here to unlock your lock with one click. But from here, you have, step-by-step check-in instructions, ensuring that, as a guest, you're never going to be confused. We're aware that some of the properties some of our customers use today that operate today may be down a sinuous road and a little bit harder to find. Sometimes those are the best hidden gems, but that also means that you need to offer an easy way, an easy access. And sometimes Google Maps isn't an option because reception isn't good. So as long as you've opened this portal while you had reception, you can access it. And we are going to be offering as well guests the ability to download it so that they can keep an offline version too.
Oh, perfect.
So you can create customized, step by step here, and again, mark yourself as checked in. This comes in handy in a couple of ways. So a guest that has marked themselves as checked in will, in real time, update the check-in status here. And so what's going to happen is this enables you as an operator to know that the guest has marked themselves as being in the home, which is one, reassuring, and two, extremely helpful for operations team on the ground to know that if there's a maintenance issue that they wanted to fix, that they can no longer do so because the guest is actually in the property now. There are other ways in which that can be triggered. If the guest uses their smart code on the lock, we'll also mark them as checked in. And obviously for full service properties, you can do it manually as well, and just do so here. As I mentioned earlier, this is a test property, so we don't have any smart devices connected. But for any smart device in the property, you'd have a section here called your rentals with a guidebook on the property, so you can also offer information about how to use specific appliances, how to access the pool. But most importantly, you can actually unlock the door from your phone and only use those smart devices for the duration of your stay. We didn't quite talk about upsells yet, but upsells are obviously an important component of Suiteop. Today, I think operators need to find strategic ways to increase revenue per available room, RevPAR, and simultaneously there's an increasing interest for experiences. I think people are now valuing experiences just as much as they're valuing accommodations and other parts of travel. And so offering this as part of one's stay is crucial. Now, what we understand is that you may not have staff on site to deliver those experiences, and so we have powerful integrations to things like Vider, so that you can immediately handpick specific experiences in your area and connect to those to Suiteop right here. Once you're connected to a Vider experience as an operator, you then benefit from commissions that you entirely get. With Suiteop, our goal is really to empower you to increase your RevPAR and not necessarily take fees there. Alternatively, you can also offer your own upsells, customized as well, some of which can be requests. You might not want to approve those from the get-go. Some of which can actually be paid for directly inside the tool. And then naturally, house rules and directions, which will open a Google Maps link, Wi-Fi detail. All those are things that are readily available to your guests throughout their stay.
That's great. It's all there.
So, ease of use is important for guests, but it's also important for operators. You want to be able to have a tool that you can onboard quickly. And so, creating a guide like this, this was a guide I created briefly for Orlando. It takes a couple of minutes, and maintaining it is just as easy. You'll be able to offer this way, a really unique way for your guests to be able to discover hidden gems, customize the text and images as you wish. But what we can do is we pre-populate all that text in those images based on the locations that you enter, so that you don't have to do the heavy lifting of launching your guide. And then you can take the time that you need to then customize it as you want, but benefit from Suiteop, from day one. One little Easter egg is our postcard feature. So as a guest, we're enabling you to send a true postcard to anyone. Currently, this is supported in the United States, but that means that if you are an operator using Suiteop, you can enable your guest to send an actual postcard to someone around, and in doing so, will mail a true physical postcard to that individual, and it's a service we offer completely free of charge to our customers as a bit of a nice, I think, retro and yet very hospitable way of bringing hospitality back into the mix.
Absolutely. And I love that idea because who doesn't like getting mail, like physical mail?
It's nice to get a real postcard, especially in between all the snail mail that we get today. So I think
Absolutely.
that always means a lot.
Absolutely. And then you were saying, I mean, you told me it's in beta and not really available yet, but you do have kind of a maintenance and operations module that you guys are going to be
Absolutely.
working on. Well, we'll look.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'll certainly enrich the platform even more. So tell me about, how people can get started with, Suiteop, and how people can find and connect with you and move forward if they'd like more information.
Sure thing. So to learn more about Suiteop, obviously check out our website, suiteop.com. You'll find hopefully as answers to a lot of your questions. That being said, we're an extremely responsive bunch. So email us at any time using either the contact form or reach out to me directly, simon@suiteop.com. At any point, I'm always happy to give you an in-depth demo of the product and even just talk shop. We're all very passionate about the industry, so if you just want to learn more about the product and how we got to where we are, I'm always happy to chat. With that being said, we're currently have a very deep integration to Guesty that is two-way, which really enables you to connect Suiteop to your PMS in just a few minutes and launch 150 plus properties in maybe a couple of hours. We are very excited to be launching a bunch of other PMS integrations, but to STR Hub listeners today, we are offering a 3-month trial, which is pretty unprecedented to new users. We're really, I think, very confident about the value the product brings, and in that way, I want to make sure that users can benefit from it and feel confident about investing in the software as they, in the first couple of months before being built.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's very generous. I'm sure that people will be excited, and definitely I would encourage you all, if you've kind of been excited about what you've seen here and what they're building, and there's probably lots of people who can see the value of this, and I would highly encourage you to reach out to Simon and the Suiteop team and learn a little bit more about what they're building, because it's really exciting. This concept of having to go multiple places to be able to run our operations, that lag between all of the different tasks that we're doing, it's great to have a kind of a comprehensive solution where all of those different parts and pieces are all in one place, and it's all talking to each other and very coordinated. So I was really excited when I heard about what they were building, and was very thankful that they were willing to come on the show and tell us about it. But then even more so that Simon was willing to stick around and actually show us kind of behind the scenes and give us a tour. So thank you so much, Simon. I truly appreciate it.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for your time, Christian. And I know we're very honored to be part of the STR Hub list of platforms featured out there. And I think you're doing a really crucial job today, shedding light on the various options that are available to operators as the landscape can feel a bit overwhelming. So hopefully, for some people, will find this Suiteop demo specifically helpful and want to explore it a bit more.
Absolutely. Alrighty, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we will let you go and hope that you find yourself right back here next week and learning a little bit more about the different solutions that are out there for the short-term rental industry. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Christian.